A notorious serial killer confesses to murdering a woman who, for years, was only known as Orange Socks. That's all she was wearing when investigators found her on Halloween Day, exactly 46 years ago. He took back that confession, and the case is still cold. This is Unsolved. October 31st, 1979, investigators discovered a woman in a concrete ditch in the Georgetown area wearing nothing but a pair of orange socks. The description became a moniker for her for the next 40 years, as investigators never knew her name. In 1984, a man named Henry Lee Lucas confessed to her murder along with hundreds of others. He'd soon become known as the Confession Killer. He later took back his confession in the Orange Socks case, though, before dying in prison in 2001. Decades later, in 2019, DNA testing helped Williamson County investigators with a huge breakthrough. They identified this woman as Deborah Louise Jackson, or Larned, a 23-year-old from the Abilene area. A year later, her real name was finally inscribed on her headstone. But still, questions remain about this case and about who took her life exactly 46 years ago. So joining me today is Detective Mark McKinney with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. So Detective, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
So this case has so much history. It's one we have covered frequently over the years and has captured the attention of the Austin area. Let's go back to the beginning though. What do we know about what happened on that Halloween so many years ago?
So we know that someone put her there after killing her. She was put off the side of the interstate, which was and still is pretty heavily traveled roadway from people all over the place going up and down that road. They put her there and just left her there wearing, like you said, with nothing but orange socks.
Tell us about what that must have been like. We know you weren't there at the time. You have, of course, joined the case later on, but what must that have been like for investigators to find someone in such a jarring state?
Very frustrating, I would assume. It would be extremely frustrating knowing that someone did that to a young girl. It would also be extremely frustrating knowing that that was likely a place where they didn't necessarily take her life there, but at least dumped her there. So there would be a lot of unanswered questions that would have to be followed up on.
And so little evidence to go on for investigators there. I know usually items found at the scene are kind of a starting point. So where do you start as an investigator, as a detective, when you've got nothing to go on?
The first place to start in a case like this is to identify her, to do victimology, to determine where she came from, where she was going, who her family is. That would be absolutely the first step.
We know DNA technology played a key role later on in this case, but take us back to 1979. Was that even an option at the time?
No, the lab testing was extremely limited then in the things that they could do. They relied heavily on fingerprints and stuff like that. Now we need the DNA that's the equivalent like to the tip of a ballpoint pen, and then I'm not even sure that it even existed. Right. That they even had the ability to test DNA, period.
Yeah. I want to get back to the process and the years of work that it took investigators to identify her. But first, Georgetown has changed so much over the years. I can imagine that location looks wildly different now, 46 years later. So, do you have any indication from folks at your agency about what Georgetown was like at the time and what a crime like this might have done to the Williamson County community?
Yes, that we have discussed that with past investigators, and that particular kind of crime, a homicide then, would have been very rare and disturbing for the small rural community that Georgetown was at that time. Georgetown was a small town then. It is not now, but it was then, and there would have been a lot of shock that occurred there in their little town.
How did that play into the investigation? Was there any thought that she could have been from there, or was it known pretty early that she might have, not been from the Williamson County community?
Yeah, I think it was known fairly early when, being a small town, nobody recognized her or anything. Wasn't one of the local, people that the sheriff's office dealt with a lot. They would have assumed that time she probably had something to do with the interstate, that it was something, going up and down the highway, maybe somebody from out of town, out of the area that, dumped her there.
So much has been made over the years of the orange socks she was wearing. In fact, when we didn't know her name, it kind of became how she was known. What do those items of clothing mean for this investigation? I imagine that's where investigators had to start.
Yeah, that is where they had to start, being that is one of the only physical pieces of evidence that they had. That was obviously extremely important. The fact that they were orange, those are not a extremely common color of socks, so that stood out. And being that that's the only clothing she was wearing, that's where the orange socks name came from. Being as we didn't have her identified, she didn't have any identifying information on her, and that's how she was identified.
The other thing that has caught people's eyes over the years is, of course, when this happened, Halloween. And we've reported in the past that investigators believe she was likely killed on Halloween or maybe a day before. Do investigators have any indication that the holiday, when we know lots of people are out, people may be celebrating, people are out late, did that have anything to do with her killing, or did it just so happen that that's when she was found?
I don't have really an answer for that. I know that there's no direct link between her killing and Halloween. I can speculate that it could have had something to do with the probably a little heavier traffic with the holiday, people being out, like you said. But I don't have any direct link tying her death to Halloween.
Yeah.
No.
So talk to me just a bit about a huge piece of this, and I think the reason a lot of folks know this case is that just a few years later, someone confessed. Tell us about that confession and who Henry Lee Lucas was.
So Henry Lee Lucas is a widely known serial killer that he actually confessed to hundreds of murders, many of which there ended up being conflicting either physical evidence, or he didn't have specific details that the killer would know, that he ended up being actually not guilty of a lot of those killings that he admitted to. He had an accomplice, Otis Toole, that they traveled all over the place. They were primarily living in the Florida area, and they confessed to murders all over the world.
When he confessed in this case, her identity was still not known.
Correct.
What was that confession like? What do we know about what he claimed in this case?
He claimed that he had killed her. There was a lot of things that were done that we wouldn't do now, just that we know through training and learning over the years, that you don't do certain things because you don't want to obtain a false confession. That's obviously not our goal. It's in fact the opposite of our goal. We wouldn't want ever to put somebody in prison for something that they didn't do, or get them to confess to something they didn't do. I think the case with Henry Lee was he wanted to be famous. I think he wanted to be a famous serial killer, and so he would pretty much admit to anything you wanted him to.
He was convicted in this case, and that conviction still stands. But
the important thing about his conviction is he was convicted solely based off his confession. That is the only thing that they had and used against him at the time, and the conviction still stands today.
It's striking, as someone who's sat in a lot of courtrooms, that's not often the case, or rarely ever. I don't believe I've ever in recent years seen a case where there wasn't some kind of additional evidence, physical evidence, particularly with DNA technology the way that it is now. Talk to me about what that's like as an investigator to know that there was this conviction in this case, but now knowing that Lucas confessed to so many crimes that investigators believe he did not commit.
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating, and it's a large hurdle to overcome, knowing that you're working a case that is that there's already somebody that's convicted and charged for. Henry Lee has obviously passed away, but there is conflicting evidence that says that he was punching in and out on a time card in Florida at the time where he confessed to killing our victim here. He also confessed to another murder in our county that occurred in 1978, where 2 people were killed and dumped somewhere, I can't remember exactly where, off 35 somewhere in a similar area, and he confessed to that one as well. But not too long after that, there was, where they did have the DNA evidence and the ability to test all that, we were able to actually find the actual killer of those people, proving that he did not kill those people, but yet he confessed to it.
And we know too that he ended up taking back his confession in this particular case.
He
before his
recanted.
death. Again, I imagine frustrating for investigators. Talk to us, is there any merit to him being related in some way to this case? Do we know at this point if he had any relation, or was it truly a false confession?
I can't say that he was for sure not involved in it. He obviously was. He was convicted of it, and he did confess to it. There are some very conflicting things with his confession. I would say until we were able to link somebody 100% and say that another person did it, that I would never say for 100% certainty that Henry Lee Lucas did not do it.
We want to fast forward several decades. A major breakthrough a few years ago by your agency, investigators were able to finally put a name to the face. Before that announcement, we had seen several sketches released over the years as your agency and other law enforcement were trying to understand who this woman is. So I think we have some of those sketches there. Tell us a little bit about the role of sketches in trying to identify whether it's a suspect or, in this case, a victim.
So the sketch would play, and did play in this case, a huge role because we obviously can't release the photos of her face from the crime scene. We wouldn't ever do that, just out of respect for her family and her as well. But the sketch, in our case, played a huge role in identifying her because one of her family members saw the sketch and thought they recognized that sketch as their sister. And they called in. We ultimately ended up getting that person's DNA, comparing it to the DNA obtained from our victim's body, and we found out that they were a familial match.
What is that moment like, hearing from a family member who, after all these years, thinks, that's my sister, that's my family member?
That was huge. It was a huge moment to get her identified. It was some folks that worked on this case before me. They were able to get her identified, and that was fantastic work by them. Getting her identified was a huge step forward in the investigation because then we could start from the beginning and figure out where, as I said earlier, where she was coming from, where she was going, and try to figure out why she was on Interstate 35 in Georgetown, Texas in 1979.
So what do we now know about Deborah? Who was she, and how has that played a role in the investigation?
She was a daughter. She was a sister. She was from the West Texas area. She had a few issues at home. She'd like to run away without telling anybody and go to other locations in the state. So she had a couple of issues. She lived around the Dallas, Texas area for a while. The last known place that she worked was up around Azle. It was at an assisted living facility up there. We still are trying to figure out why she was in Georgetown. And that's what we would really like to know, is how she got there. We know that she likely could have been hitchhiking, been taking rides, with the interstate. That's the difficulty with that.
Just so many people travel.
So many people
in that area. I want to circle back to identifying her. I think we've talked on this show about how I think a lot of us have misconceptions about how DNA technology works. We think you get a swab and there's a match right away. So talk about, this sounds like such a multi-step process with the sketch and then DNA testing and then genealogy to connect her family. Why are each of those steps important in a case like this? Maybe peel back the curtain that it's not necessarily an instantaneous thing.
No, it's far from an instantaneous thing. It takes months and sometimes even years of lab work. The sketch, first and foremost, was the thing that made the family member even suspect that it was their family member. So the sketch in an unidentified person's case is a huge deal, because we need the right person to basically that jumps ahead the process. If you're having to do genetic genealogy, you start from let's say an unidentified person, and you start with millions of possibilities. If someone calls in that says that, hey, this might be my sister or my brother, wife or husband, something like that, it completely skips the first half of the process to where we can then go directly to that family and look at their DNA if they'll provide it for us, and we can work from there. But it is far from an instant process. There's several different places that have to put their hands on it, and several different tests that have to be done, and multiple interviews that have to be done during that. It's a very time-consuming process.
Like you said, incredible work by your agency to just find out her name and know a little bit about who she was. But there's still so much work to be done to figure out what happened to her. So what has that work looked like in recent years, now that we do know who Deborah was?
So we spent a long time following up with her, now who we know is her family. We were trying to figure out where she worked, and where the problem was with her being a runaway and just leaving home without telling anybody, without where she was going. That was before you would have the ability to track someone, or she wouldn't have had Life 360. So we're having to put together the pieces as to where she went, where she had come from, and try to put basically a mapped timeline as to how she got where we found her at. And we fortunately have been able to generate numerous leads, good investigative leads on that. Every year as well, the ability to test different things with DNA has gotten so much better. And every year we kind of look at the lab procedures and see what can and can't be done. And if there's something else that we could do with what physical evidence we have, we try to do that to keep the case up to current standards, to where we're doing everything that we can to see if we can figure out who killed her.
So this isn't sitting on a shelf or in a box somewhere?
Absolutely not.
Like. Is there DNA testing going on right now? Are you able to let us know that?
Yes, we are actively doing DNA testing. We have for the last several years. We've done different methods, different labs. We are doing everything that we can in the DNA world to try to identify a suspect.
Are there any suspects right now that we can know of here as the public?
We do have some very good leads. I can't share as to whether or not we have suspects and how many we have, but we do have some very good leads on the case.
I want to circle back. We've talked about her family. What do we know about how they responded, learning all these years later what had happened to their daughter, their sister? What was their reaction? I can imagine how that must feel, but tell us a little bit about what we know from them.
I don't want to speak for them as to what they said and how they feel, but what I can suspect based off what I've seen and I've talked to them is that it was obviously a very sad situation, but also a little bit of relief knowing that they know where she is now. They had not known where she was for so long, and knowing that she is at peace and we know where she's at, I think that gave them a lot of relief.
Mm. As an investigator working, like you said, on this case year after year, what is the biggest barrier in this case? What do you think it will take to get a real answer as to what happened to Deborah Jackson?
I think the biggest barrier on all of our cases is probably the lack of public assistance. I think that, and now we do get public assistance, but I know there's a lot of people out there that have some kind of information about this case or any of our cold cases that it may seem like a very small piece of information that they don't think, surely that wouldn't matter to those guys. But that may be the one piece of information we need to connect two dots, and that could be a huge break in the case. If we could skip ahead us trying to identify this person and find this person that we need to talk to, if they would just call us and tell us who they are and how they knew Deborah or any of our victims, that would really be a big deal to us. I mean, we could use any and everybody's information that may have on this case.
It's something we've heard in nearly every episode of this show and every conversation I've had with law enforcement, with detectives, investigators. What do you think prevents people from coming forward to law enforcement? Is there a fear there or something that hinders the public from maybe having those open lines of communication, especially in cases that are as delicate as this one?
Yeah, I think there's some fear there. There's the thought that they don't want to be involved in it, that it's a serious case. It's a homicide, so nobody wants to implicate themselves in a homicide, whether it be a witness or a suspect. But I think you have to put that behind you and put in front of you the fact that it's the right thing to do, to get us answers and to get her family answers and her answers. It's just the right thing to do. And if you have some fear about what might take place after you call us, I'd be happy to walk anyone through the steps as to what happened after that. If you're just calling to give us some information, I mean, that would really be the end of it. I get your information. Hopefully it helps us and we move on down the road. Mm.
Is there anything else you want people at home to know about this case that they've likely heard about year after year? Is there anything that you really want them to take away from hearing about this case yet again?
I'd really just like them to know that we haven't stopped working this case because just because we had someone confess to it and been convicted to it or have been convicted for it. We want to find the 100% truth, and we haven't wrote it off just because there's still someone that stands convicted for it. We want to find out what actually happened. We want to find out who killed her, and if it was Henry Lee, then we could, prove that and be done with it. But we do believe there's a lot of conflicting information with his confession. We are aware of that. We are still working it. It's an active case. We work it all the time with the other cold cases we have, and any information that anyone has that they might think is very minute to them may be key to helping us solve it.
Detective Mark McKinney, thank you so much for coming to give us insight and a look at what your department is doing to try to get justice for Deborah. We appreciate it.
Sure, thank you for having me.
Join us next week on KXAN Plus for another episode of Unsolved Central Texas. New episodes air every Thursday at 1. and watch any episode anytime. Just go to KXAN.com or look for the KXAN Plus Originals category on our streaming app. We'll see you next week.